Three, two, one. Glowing Up Latina, Season 3, Episode 15. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this special joint episode of Glowing Up Latinas and Driven Latinas. I'm Kristina,
And I'm Alex.
and we are so excited to be here with y'all today. I feel like this all came together really fast, and I'm so excited about it. I've been wanting to collaborate with the podcast for a really long time.
I know, absolutely. I felt the same way. And as I was listening to your podcast, I heard like one of them is taking a break for this month, one of your hosts, and then the other one. And then for me, and then the other one, I think, has left the pod, right? And so for
Yes.
us, my sister lives in Japan, and it's very hard for us to meet because of the time difference. So you actually were like godsend to me too, because I'm like, yay, I get to collaborate and like starting 2024 on the right foot as far as like networking and getting to know other, driven Latinas, especially since you're in New York and I'm in Dallas. I feel like that's awesome that we get to collaborate even though we live, we're far apart, and I think it's great.
Like I said, for those who don't know, I'm Kristina. I'm from the Glowing Up Latina podcast, where we share how our identities as Latinas influenced us while we were glowing up and how our identity influences us presently.
And I'm Alex. I'm from the Driven Latinas podcast. My host again is Laura. She's not able to be with us because of the time difference in Japan, but like I said, we're super excited to still collaborate with Glowing Up Latinas. And of course, our podcast is about just different Latinas overcoming adversity and just sharing their journey and their stories with our listeners. So we're just so excited to be collaborating today. Like I mentioned before, it's just an honor because I feel like it was just meant to be for us to connect because we're both going through, a bit of a change in our podcast. So awesome.
Yes, I agree. I definitely love Meant to Be. And our topic today, I think, is really good. It fits both of our shows really well. And I was really happy, again, that you reached out to collaborate because I was like, I didn't know what I was going to do with this topic. And I was like, oh, perfect. Driven Latinas, like, of course, this is what I'm going to use.
Yes, the having it all, right? Like what does that even mean? And I think that's one of the things that I would love to discuss with you, right? Like what does having it all mean? And so I know you had mentioned a book, so do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So, as far as I've been able to find, like the concept or the phrase of quote unquote having it all really exploded into like our cultural vocabulary in the 1980s with the publishing of Having It All, Love, Success, Sex, Money, Even When You're Starting with Nothing by Helen Gurley Brown, who was the editor in chief of Cosmo magazine from 1965 to 1997. So, mouthful her name and the book title. I feel like it's important to mention when mentioning this book that Brown, the author, was adamantly advocated against the title to her publisher, telling her biographer later in life that it sounded so effing cliche to her. But nonetheless, the book was titled as such, and it was a bestseller, even with its omission of kids. According to the New York Times, kids are only mentioned on 6 of the 462 pages of the book, which I find so interesting because, like, in the concept of having it all, like, family and kids definitely falls within that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I some could say otherwise, I do have a lot of friends who are 30 plus year olds and they're like, no, I'm not having kids, which is, that's to each their own. But that's where I kind of go into the idea of like it really truly depends on the person, like what do they value,
Mhm.
what is important to them, as far as having it all. So some people might value money and material things, and other people might value, family and health. And so I truly believe that it really depends on the person and what exactly is important to them, what do they value in life. And so I think it's going to vary from person to person.
What does your having it all include, Alex?
For me, it's really family. It has to do a lot with family. Growing up, as I mentioned in our pod, we grew up really low income, and our mom was a single mom with 6 children, and so she was just trying to make ends meet. And I will to say this in a true honesty, I never knew we were poor or quote unquote because of how rich, it we felt having each other. And I always tell my sister, I just feel like we were very trauma bonded in that sense, because if we had each other, we were happy. And so like with my friends and I had no idea that I was poor up until I started high school, and I started seeing like that my friends would easily get a car or just all these material things that of course like my mom couldn't afford and give to us. So and that's where our podcast kind of um entails, is like dealing with adversities and like how it really truly shaped us to be hard workers and driven and get our own bread, as they say. So I don't know. I think to me, having it all is family, and I think that goes back to again my childhood, just having healthy kids. I have 2 kids. I have a husband, and like having just health and seeing them grow up, and being in extracurricular activities, as opposed to me, I couldn't. My mom couldn't pay for any of those things, and to me, that fulfills me. That's what drives me every day, is like my family. But what is having it all? What does that mean to you, Kristina?
To me, well, I'm just turned 30 this year and I do not have kids. I'm not married. Um, I also grew up with a single mom and 2 brothers. And I don't know, I feel like the way that we grew up, like we were just really important to each other. Like I tell my mom all the time, like it was us growing up, like it was our little quartet that we had. So I feel like family does play a very big role into my having it all. Um, I also career does play a role in it. I went to law school, and so now I'm an attorney here in New York. And I'm trying to work on getting admitted in the state of Texas. Just a lot of paperwork.
Oh my gosh,
And
amazing.
thank you. And, I definitely like value my friendships with people, and I like to travel and really just I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that goes into my having, like friendships, finances, and personal fulfillment. Like starting the podcast was like something I always wanted to do. So my hobbies. And so I think I have a hard time like with the having it all concept, because sometimes I'm thriving in like certain areas of my life. Like sometimes I'm on my responsibilities when it comes to my family. Like I'm showing up for everybody. I'm doing what's needed of me. And then other times I feel like I cannot like take this call right now from my cousin or from somebody who's calling because they need like some help with something. And I feel bad. Like I feel guilt. We've talked about it on our podcast, eldest daughter syndrome. Um, and it's just, yeah, sometimes I feel like even if you're doing really well in one area, then sometimes it might mean that you're not doing so well in others.
That's how I feel as well, in the sense of like staying in shape, and like, making sure your house is tidy, and like making sure your kids are thriving as well. Like there's just so many hats that I think we wear, and it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming, because you do feel you that you or the comparing, right? Like, well, so and so has,
Hmm.
and da da da. And so I think that it is hard, especially as a Latina, in I think I do feel that just women in general, I feel, wear a lot of different hats, and it is hard to do it all. Like I told my sister when I got my first, we hired a cleaning lady, and I told her I didn't want to tell you this because she kept coming to my house, and it was sparkling clean, like to the point where she was like, "Oh my gosh, girl, like you really stepped it up in the area of tidiness." And then I sat her down and I said, "Oh, I didn't want to tell you this, but we hired this lady, and she's been coming, and that's why every time you come, it smells like flowers and roses." And she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "Because I wanted you to think that I had it all together, And it's like, so she just laughs, and she's like, "Give me her number." So I did. When she lived here, I gave her number, and she actually hired her as well. But it's true. It's like a lot of it comes from quote unquote, you should be doing it all. And she just told me, and she's had a conversation. She's like, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Like, it's okay to need help and ask for help and find help, you know? And so I know that that was like a little sidetrack, but it truly was like an eye-opening moment for me when she said, and you own it. She's like, you shouldn't feel ashamed that you had to get a cleaning lady to help you stay tidy. She's like, if anything, like you work super hard to have the things you have, and if you need help from her, like so be it. And so I don't know, that was like really nice of her to have my back on that, and then also ask for help herself. So anyway, but yes, I do feel like it's there's so many like these standards that we put on ourselves, or like these expectations that sometimes they're not realistic. Like, and I think that
Yeah.
that's okay. And I think a lot of people need to hear that it's okay to not have it all and not have it all together. But as long as you continue to push forward and find ways to help you out, I mean, you shouldn't be alone or feel alone in that sense, because like you felt like that, I felt like that, I feel like there's must be people out there that feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like when I was in law school, like law school was really the only thing I was focusing on. And then especially when I was taking the bar, like I only really ever talked to my mom, and that was it because I was studying for like 12 hours a day. And that was hard for me. But like in that moment, I had to tell myself that you're doing something for you that not only is going to make you proud, it's going to make, your family proud. So the people that love you and care about you, like they'll get it. This is the time for them to get it. And I mean, it all worked out. So I was really happy about that. But I did have a question for you. Do you find or do you think that maybe like your concept of having it all changed after you had kids and got married?
Yes, I believe it did, because before I used to be just like I think a lot of young people are nowadays, where they scroll down social media, the Instagram, the TikToks, and they see all these lavish lives that are being lived by all these influencers, and they have it all together and everything's perfect, and they start comparing themselves to that like unrealistic expectation, and then they start feeling crappy about themselves, and I feel like I fell into that same thing. I used to post all the time, and I'm like, oh, if I'm doing something I have to post it, if I'm doing something I have to post it. And then after I had kids, I mean, I felt like my life changed completely, in the sense of like I found like I did not need that reassurance from other people or that validation. Like I found it within my own family, to the point where I even deleted Facebook. I took out off my personal Instagram. I still have our Driven Latinas one, but that helped too, in the sense of like comparing and like and all these things. And I hope if there is a young listener listening, like you need to remember that whatever they post, it's just a snippet of their entire day. And most of the time it's staged just to make it look aesthetic or aesthetically pleasing or whatnot. So just try to remember that, and try not to fall into that like comparison cycle, that it's like just a vicious cycle that I feel that people do. And then they scroll and scroll and scroll, and all they see is more and more and more. So I'll be mindful of also like the content you consume, because not a lot of it is real. And like I think a lot of young people need to remember that, because I feel like that was my point of view at the time. And what about you? Do you feel like from when you were like in your 20s, or even as a teenager, like do you feel like that having it all changed for you, Kristina?
I do, especially I would say maybe like from my 20s to my 30s, I think. Um, well, I think what changed for me is that I lost the idea, or maybe the like need to have everything all at once. I started prioritizing the things that were important to me, and then everything else in my life kind of fell into place. And like even like now, I am 30 and I'm not married and I don't have kids, which in Latinx community is kind of not unheard. It's not so much unheard of anymore, but it was. And some of my older relatives, just every now and then, just a little like, well, what's going on? Not so much anymore because like I am in a relationship and I live with my boyfriend, but and even my friends, sometimes I was finding that it was coming up that people who had gotten married around me were like, well, like when are you gonna get married? Like when is that happening? It's like it'll happen when it happens. But it took me a long time, a lot of conversations with my mom, and a lot of tears, like to get to that point, to be like, it'll happen when it happens. Because for a long time, I was like, well, dang, like I thought I was going to be married by 25 and like having kids. But I think back to 25-year-old me and I'm like, you know what? That was a good thing. I was not married and having kids then. So,
Yeah, that
we on the podcast, like, all believe like in God and we grew up Catholic. And I firmly like have come to believe in like there is a divine timing to everything. So my time will come when it comes. And everything that I have worked for, like I've gotten and I've achieved. And so I trust in the plan that God has for me. As long as I'm working at it, everything will fall into place.
yes, I totally agree. And I cannot wait till I see your post, or whenever it happens, like you said, but I'm sure it will happen. And I'm gonna be in there commenting like, see, you manifested this and now it's coming to fruition. So that's exciting. No, that it will definitely happen. And like you said, sometimes we try to rush everything. And I know I'm totally guilty. I had my first baby when I was 23. I graduated graduated college, and then like got married. Within a year I got married, and then within 3 months after getting married I got pregnant. So it was like super fast, and I was on in that like rush mentality too. I don't regret it now, just because like my sister, she had her baby when she was 30, and she'll tell me like, oh my gosh, your kids are pouring themselves cereal and da da da, and she's like, and so we just laugh, and she's like, I said, I know it just happened because, I fell in love and I met him at that time. But like you met him, and now you're, fingers crossed it all works out and you'll get married someday too. And so I think it's like you said, it just depends on the timing, and it will happen. It will definitely happen. But yeah, same thing with me. I feel like my having it all for sure changed from young to now. I'm like, why was I making all those things priority? Like I remember just like working my butt off, going to school, and like I needed to, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to have this, I have to have, and it was a lot of material things that now I'm like, you don't need all that. Like now I'm okay with all my dupes. I always tell my sister, like, she's like, oh, is that a Lululemon? I'm like, no, it's a dupe. And she's like, okay, or like the Uggs, or like anything. She's like, even the Stanley Cups, I'm like, I use the dupes, I don't use the real thing. And she just laughs all the time. She's like, yep, she's like, you've changed. You've definitely changed. And I feel like your priorities change too as you get older, but be patient, people. It will like Kristina said, everything will happen when it's meant to be. So it will.
So that makes me think like about, how that piece that I was talking about, how like our society and family like influences, and how you were saying social media influences like what we think having it all looks like, what it should look like, what it entails. And I love this new like wave that we have going on of people being like, well, I don't want kids. Like that's not something that would fulfill me. And I think that's great, like not be feeling pressured by family members or society to have kids. I have friends who are my age who are just like, you know what, I like my life and I like to do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. And I just love that we've gotten to a point where we can be honest with ourselves about like what we want and not give in to people. Sometimes I find myself giving in to my family when they're like, well,
Oh no, trust me. I know what you mean. You always have those tias or the tios that throw a little question here and there, but I'm glad that you're right. Like a lot of us are starting to just embrace, that we don't have to go by the book, especially in our culture, right? Like, or like, even I know this is a little bit off topic, but like talking, like still talking and keeping in communication with toxic family members just because they're blood, like things like that. Like I notice now more millennials, I feel, and even Gen Zs are more like, they're toxic, I don't want anything to do with them, and period. I don't care if they're blood. And so like a lot of things have changed just like that, like where in our culture it's normal for us to have kids really young or get married really young. And now I do see that change, that wave, like you said, and I'm here for it. I'm all here for it.
For sure. And, you know, do you I know you said that you deleted like your Facebook and your Instagram and you try really hard not to fall into the comparison trap, but did you find yourself like maybe like doing some things that you were like, ah, does this really make me happy or am I doing it because everybody else is doing it?
Yes, I found myself, it was more, it's really silly because I had kids, so it was a lot of like, oh, my kid is doing this, like, and oh, my kid, is my kid not like, like, you start like panicking as a parent, like, should my kid be on that milestone or should my kid, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like every kid, and especially because I'm in the education, right, a career, I'm an assistant principal for an elementary school, and so back then I was a teacher, so like I know that kids are different and they develop different at different stages and different ages, and it's just like, why am I doing this to myself? Like it was really like I now I look back, I'm like, how dumb was that? Like I would always panic, like, oh my gosh, like should my kid already be hitting that milestone, because I had other friends that had children my kid's age. So yes, I do feel like I definitely fell into that trap of comparing, and it was not so much like lit like how do you call it, material things or anything, like, oh, if she has it I have to get it, or if he has it I have to have that. It was mostly like parenting things, and like I said, because I'm in the education and just like a career in my career, I know that it was a silly thing to think, because kids develop at different ages and stages, and every kid is different. So anyway, that was silly of, but what about you? Do you feel like you've ever fallen into that trap of comparing and like, self-sabotaging yourself in the sense of like making yourself feel bad for, well, this time I should be doing this or blah blah blah.
Well, you know, I've talked about on our podcast some, but one of them, you know, that relationship sphere of my life, I did fall into that trap because everybody around me, you know, had was in committed relationships, was getting married, and now like I'm kind of watching everybody like start to have kids and stuff, and I find that this time around, like I do sort of feel the pressure to have kids, but in the sense that like, oh, you're 30, like you have a biological clock, like, oh, maybe we should be thinking about this a little more seriously. Not so much pressure from outside sources. I mean, I guess it's influenced by the fact that my friends are having kids, but then I also think of, you know, all the things that I've done in my life that I was allowed to do or had the opportunity to do because I took my time with, you know, the bigger things. So I graduated from college in 2012 and then I took a 2-year break and I went to law school, and for a long time I felt really bad about that 2-year gap that I had because, you know, I was technically like behind in my career. I was going to school with people who were like 2 3 years younger than me, and you know they're all further and like they have like more time technically. um but you know, I wasn't ready to go to law school right after college. It's a lot of work and it's so demanding, and I am grateful. I didn't maybe have the foresight to realize that, but looking back, I did. I realized I didn't have the time. And I got to explore the city in a way I didn't get to when I was in college with people that I really cared about. And, you know, even in college, I did traveling. In law school, I made really great friends with a lot of people that I would not have met had I started law school or earlier. And, you know, I everything is like happening the way that it's supposed to, or everything happened the way that it was supposed to for a reason. Like I couldn't have got through law school without the group of people that I met. And so the same way with like the relationship aspect of my life, that stuff is great. And like I keep saying, I'm sorry, I feel like I keep repeating myself, but you know, it'll happen when it happens. And when it happens, I'll be able to look back on why the steps went the way that they did, why things played out the way that they did, and I'll be able to see the bigger picture.
Oh, I love that. Yes, exactly. And I'm pretty sure, like even my little sister, she feels the same way. She feels that you know, she's hitting 30. I think she's 29. And so I had that conversation too with her. So I do feel like what you're saying will resonate with a lot of our listeners, because you're not alone. Like a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but you know, it is a true thing that just patience, it will happen when it does. And I do know it took me a long time to get to the point where I'm content career wise, and like just like, okay, now I can like enjoy the fruits of my labor, because I started off like my when I graduated college, sorry, it was in education, and then I went into a teacher, and then I did my master's, and then I had to take all those exams also, and I felt like the grind. And but now I do feel like my priorities have changed. Like now I'm like, for my 2024 resolutions, one of them is like being more present with my kids. And I think I was telling my sister also in the pod that like, now I don't want to focus on so many different goals of having it all right for this year. I just want to focus on two, which number one was being more present with my kids, and then number two was just taking care of my physical health. I did have one health scare 2023, but I everything's fine. Yeah, but like I said, I don't want to go into all of that, but it's like taking care of my physical health, so that way like my body can be healthy and I can live longer for my kids. And so I don't know, it's your priorities do change as you get older. And I'm sure with kids or not, like I know some people just treat their pets like their kids, and they're completely totally happy with that. So it just depends, I feel like, the mindset of each person. And I just love how you're so positive with everything, that like it's not hard what you did. Like you passed the bar exam. Like that is like, I cannot even imagine myself doing that. And I can feel like you're so positive with everything that you've been through. You're like, yeah, but maybe all of this happened because once you see like I said, like the fruits of all your labor, you're like, oh, now I know why all of this played out the way it did. Like now I found the love of my life, or whatever the case is. But no, I do love how every person has a different mindset, and like yours is very positive, and I just love that it radiates.
Thank you. I have to credit my mother for that. A lot of tears went into conversations with her. But so thank you, mom.
Oh, love it.
But even though like, I am this positive, I try to be this positive a lot of the time. I still do like fall into that like, well, crap, like I don't have it all together. Like what am I doing? Like why don't I have it all together? And it's mostly because, there's not enough hours in the day for us to do everything that we want to do. And I feel like realistically things are always going to fall by the wayside. So for you, like, how do you cope with that? How do you like, or what do you tell yourself when you feel like you're failing yourself or someone, or, in a specific area of life, it just isn't up to par with the standards you have for yourself?
I always say, tell myself, okay, so I heard this saying in a book. I need to quote it, but it was said like, how do you eat an elephant, like one bite at a time, or something like that. I'm sure it's a famous quote people have said. And so that's what I try to do. I'm like, just take small bites, even if you're going really slow, like you're at least making an effort. Like if I don't get to go to the gym, like at least I try to like compensate by like maybe eating a vegetable or a banana instead of Cheetos or whatever it is. But as long as I'm taking those tiny baby steps, I tell myself, okay, it's gonna be fine. But it goes back to the mindset, like just staying positive in that sense. But because it's hard. What about you? Tell me your secrets.
So I think like I try to remind myself that like I am only one person, and because I'm only one person, I have to prioritize what I get done in a day. But I know that like if I'm doing my best and I'm putting the important things first, then everything else is figure outable. We'll figure it out. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we'll figure it out. And maybe like this certain area isn't coming together right now, but that doesn't mean it never will. And whenever it does come together, I'll be super excited and I'll be like, look at that, I did it. So I try not to beat myself up, because I used to be like a very like beat myself up type of person. And that wasn't working for me either. So I had to try something different.
I love that. Yes. And just take the baby steps to get there. I mean, it, like I said, just, and you said a really good one, prioritize. I think that's a really important one. So that I always try to do like the worst dreaded thing early in the morning, just so that way I'm like, check, the most dreaded thing is done. Like whether it's laundry or like working out or whatever is the most dreaded thing for me. I try to prioritize it in the morning. And when it doesn't happen, again, don't beat yourself up. Just, find another way to kind of help with whatever it is your goal is. Like try take a little baby step that might help you get a tiny bit closer to that goal that you're trying to reach. But yes,
That's
we're not perfect people, we're not perfect. Right.
right. No, definitely not. I'm not.
Yeah, no.
That's a really good tip to do the most dreaded thing first. I think like my tip for everybody would be I prep as much of my day the night before. So like I decide what I'm wearing the night before. Like I figure out how I'm gonna do my hair. I decide what I'm gonna do, like if I'm gonna wear any makeup or anything. I try to get everything as like together the night before as I can because it kind of helps the morning go smoother. Where I have a tendency sometimes to run a little slow, and then it puts me like I'm on a backlog for the rest of my day.
Yes, and setting the alarm a little bit earlier than you should get up to. I think that has helped me so much this year, this starting this year, because I would snooze and snooze and snooze, and then I'm rushing, and my whole day is like a rush. And so, like, just setting that alarm a little bit sooner than you're supposed to get up, and it'll help too. But no, yeah, we're not robots. I feel like I say we because I've had these conversations with my sisters. Like, we are gonna need help, and it's okay to ask for help. And I think that, like you said, in our community, especially like in our culture, we have a really hard time reaching out and asking for help. Like, we want to do it all, and and that's how me and my sister just grew up. Like, even asking each other for help, we try, if somebody texts us that they need help with something, it's because we were the last resort. And I always laugh at my sisters. I'm like, I'll help you, because I know that it probably took you so much to reach out and ask. But we have to. We're not robots where we can just, get all the things. And for me, it was definitely like lowering my expectations with once I had kids, with the tidiness. I was like, okay, I'm never gonna have that Drink magazine perfect home, and I have to admit it, there's gonna be toys in the playroom all over the place, and it's gonna be fine. And so a lot of it is just reminding myself, like, all of those things are temporary. Like, my kids are going to eventually grow out of all of that, and then the house is going to be quiet. Just like my mom says, when I go to her house, she goes, I miss the pitter patter of the little, foot the little footsteps on the rug or on the floor. Or she's like, I miss all of that, I don't have it. And so I have to just constantly remind myself, like, all of this is temporary, it too shall pass. It's,
um so like as a mom, you have to have that time for yourself. Like, do you find it hard to like kind of schedule that or like work that in? How does that I guess kind of go for you? Because that would kind of fall like in the having it all type category. No? Yes, maybe.
yes, I do agree. And I do feel like it was a lot harder when my two kids were smaller. So I had they're only a year and a half apart from each other. So at some point in life, they were both in diapers, and that stage in life was very hard for me. But I had to figure out ways to make it work. And for me, again, I always tried to be active in some way, somehow. Like, even in high school, I was in the dance drill team. So, like, exercise.
Oh,
And
me too.
yes. Oh, see, we have something in common. And Laura was too. So the other host of our Driven Latinas podcast. So that's awesome. I can't wait to share all the things with her, everything we talked about. But no, so yeah, definitely always tried to stay active. And then once I started having kids, of course your body changes. Like, it just happens naturally. And so it's very hard to accept it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to, get back and work out. And I wanted to do all the things, but it was definitely really hard when they were that little. Now I have more time because one is 8 and one is 6. So I have they're independent, so it's easier. But when they were that small, I would go to the gym where they had the daycare, and that's how I would just leave them in there for like 30 minutes, and then I would go work out and come back. And so that definitely helped in that sense, but it was harder. Like things like I didn't talk to a lot of the friends that I talked to before, like especially because it was right after college. So a lot of my college friends, some, they are, I was starting a family, they were out in Cancun partying, and so like a lot of our priorities were different. So that it was okay, not, we didn't end in bad terms. It was just like our lives were going into two separate paths, and it was that wasn't too hard for me to accept, because like again, my whole life was revolving around these two little ones. And so but definitely my priorities changed once I had kids. And I mean, I do feel like a lot of people going through that like transitional time.
Wow, yeah, I can't imagine what that would be like, but good for you that you found time. Because I know sometimes, or I guess you hear a lot of moms who kind of put like themselves on the back burner. But it sounds like you really embrace like in order to be your best mom self, you have to be your best self. In order to do
Yes.
that, you got to prioritize yourself a little bit sometimes.
Absolutely. And I know
So,
it's hard for moms to do, because then we start getting that mom guilt. Like even doing the podcast with my sister, like we both get a lot of mom guilt, like, oh, we could be spending. So at some point we were doing it like really late at night just because we knew they were asleep. And that's also hard to overcome, the mom guilt. But just know that your kids are good, they're healthy, and as long as you're taking care of them, like physically and mentally, it's all going to be okay. And so I have to keep reminding myself that. And that was one of the reasons why we also started the podcast, because we said, to my sister and I told ourselves, if nothing comes out of this, at least these our kids will have all of this footage and all of this audio that they can go back and listen to, their moms growing up too, because we're growing up as well and learning. So that's one of the beauties of having a podcast.
oh, that's really cute. Oh my goodness.
I know. And so you too. So if you ever plan on having kids, then they'll have all this footage of their mom like making a difference and like making uplifting people. And I think that's beautiful.
Well, I don't want us to sign off just yet. Could you maybe like tell my listeners a little bit more about you and your sister and why you think they need to go over to your feed right now and listen to all of your episodes?
Absolutely. So I think you should go. We call ourselves like las hermanas also, and las hermanas mayores, right? Like the older sister. Now I need to listen to the episode you said, because I listened to the cafecito one. I really loved the business one, and
Oh,
I
thank
thought
you.
yeah, that one was really good. I was like, I wish I was there having coffee too, with a concha or something. It was, I really enjoyed listening to that one. And but I will definitely listen to the older sister, because I feel like that's how we see ourselves. Like if we always, when we're talking and creating our podcast, we always think of like us talking to like a younger cousin or like a younger sister. So that way they feel like we're guiding them. We talk about adversities that us as Latinas have overcome, and how we've been able to get to the other side. And so I don't know, I think you all should go listen to it if you are in need of some positivity and some awesome inspiring stories.
Yes, if you love us, I know you'll love them. So please go give them a listen.
I know. What about you? Tell me for our listeners, tell us why our listeners should go and click like on Glowing Up Latina.
So, like Alex mentioned in the beginning, right now it is just me. I started the show with two of my friends who I met during the time I was in college. And one has left the podcast because she is expecting her first child, and we're very excited for her. And Amanda is currently out this month. And yeah, so what we talk about really is, I know it's going to sound so cliche, but like anything and everything. We cover friendship drama. Our listeners know that us as podcast hosts, this job is not easy, which I'm sure you know. Like you do it with your sister, and we talk about some friendship issues we had at the beginning of the season. We cover familial expectations, we cover societal expectations. So you get a lot of varying perspectives. And right now that it's just me, I'm also bringing in different people. So you're still getting those different perspectives, which I love. And I'm doing a lot of fun things this month, a lot of different things. So, go on over and check us out and see if anything piques your interest.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. And we'll make sure that our listeners also subscribe. I know you have Instagram, right? Glowing Up Latina. And y'all should
Yes.
follow, like post really good reels. I think we need to get better at that, by the way. And so like you're able to see a snippet of what the podcast episode is about. And like I said, listen to the Cafecito one. I really highly recommend that one because it does talk about a Latina entrepreneur and how she started her coffee business. And I love that she's so transparent and just like shares like the ups and the downs, like, and that's what we need. We need the raw experience. And so highly recommend guerreras and guerreros to go over to Glowing Up Latina Instagram. I know they have a YouTube channel as well, right? Is that correct, Kristina?
Yes, we do have a YouTube channel, and Driven Latinas also has an Instagram account, and y'all have a YouTube channel as well, correct?
Yes, we do. At Driven Latinas podcast. Again, we need to get better at posting on there. So we'll post more content soon as well, because I think a lot of times we post on our Spotify and forget to upload the video, but I won't forget to upload this one, I promise.
So on my show, what we do at the end is we share our glow for the week. Something that's making you happy, that's just, giving you the extra little sparkle. So, Alex, what is making you glow this week?
This week, well, number one, that I was able to collaborate with Kristina. Like I told her at the beginning of the podcast, she was God sent to me because it's been really hard to meet with my sister because due to the time difference. And whenever we do meet, it's like in person. She only comes to Texas once a year because of her, she's living over there in Japan. And so just being able to connect with her, getting to know her, we have a lot of similarities. I'm sure if she's open to it, I would totally love to do another one. Whenever she wants to reach out, I'm willing to do any topic that she wants to cover, because I'm learning from her as well. Like, I didn't even know you were an attorney. That's like amazing. And that's
Thank you.
really hard thing to do too. So congrats on that. And then I did want to shout out Kelsey Aida and her journal, Letters to the Universe, 50 guided letters to help you script and manifest in your life. I was reading that book and I was starting to journal because I was trying to be more intentional 2024 to journal. And I just started journaling and I posted it on Instagram, shout out to, and I tagged her and she said, "Oh, you have a podcast? I would love to join you as one of your guest speakers." And I was like, "Are you serious?" She's like, "Yes, I would love to do one on manifestation if that's okay with you." I'm like, "Absolutely." So shout out to her. That's my glow of the week. And like I told Kristina, she is my first, like our first speaker was my little sister, but she's our first one, especially from out of state, from New York. I can't shout her out enough. And I'm pretty sure we'll find people, and network, and we'll be able to connect more and more in the future, for sure.
Well, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say. And my glow, obviously, is being able to collaborate with you. This is the first collaboration that we've done on the show, and you made it so easy. This was a great time. I'm so excited that I got to know you, and we're definitely going to have to do something with your sister because I would love to hear more about her, and I'm sure our listeners would love to learn what she's doing in Japan and how all of that happened. I know all of us imagine living somewhere else sometimes. So
Yes, absolutely. And she is the sweetest. Like she has told people like I will tour you around. So we're actually going in June to visit her. So yes,
Oh,
my family and
wow.
I already got our passports and we got our tickets and we're flying in June, guys. So you'll be able to, maybe we can do one when I'm actually over there with her or
Oh
something.
my
We'll
gosh, that
figure
would
it
be
out.
so cool.
Yes. You think of
Well,
a
I hope you guys
topic you
have a
want to
great
cover?
time.
I know we will. But let us know whenever you want to collaborate with her. She was really sad that she wasn't able to come to this one. Like Kristina said, it was pretty fast. We were like, let's just do it. And so, but with more time, she'll be able to join us. If you do are open to that, we are too. So, yeah.
Of course. So for Glowing Up Latina, you can catch us every Wednesday here on YouTube. You can also watch or stream all of our past episodes on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to spread the word and share both of our podcasts, Glowing Up Latina and Driven Latinas, with your friends and leave us glowing reviews on Apple Podcasts. For Glowing Up Latina, again, you can find us on Instagram at Glowing Up Latina. And do not forget, you can send your season 3 finale submissions to our weekly Instagram box or via email at glowinguplatina@gmail.com.
Awesome. I love it. Yes, and you can follow us at Driven Latinas on Instagram and YouTube. So we can't wait to hear all the questions that you might have. You can put, they usually just drop them on the messenger or whatever you want to do. It works for us. So we're excited.
And until next week, keep glowing, mija. Bye.